uniquely New Yorkian innovations, one could say. There are also two forms with long and convoluted histories and parallel prehistories. The story of comics starts long before comics, with pulps and Big Little books and comic strips. The story of hip-hop begins with jazz, with soul, even with disco, with patter and dueling rhymes, or dozens, with getting on the good foot, with kung fu moves, with graffiti, with rhythm itself. And both forms deal with combining elements. Words and pictures, DJing and rapping and breakdancing. These are two hybrid cultures and two cultures of inclusion. So, that's my introduction. Now that that's out of the way, let's meet the panelists. The creator of Rap and Max Robot, the first rap comic from 1985. Yeah. 86. Eric Orr, also graphic designer, album cover artist extraordinaire. Next to him, Kagan McLeod, the artist of the History of Rap poster, which, if you haven't seen it, you should hit him up and get a copy. It is beautiful. Yeah, show your wares. Also the artist and writer of the Infinite Kung Fu graphic novel, which is well worth your time. Next to Kagan, one of the, I personally would say, the most important and influential hip-hop producer. Remixer extraordinaire, releasing a number of great records, both under his own name and as half of the central agreement, Pete Rock and Steel Fuse, Pete Rock. Thank you. Next, Adam Illis Walenta, probably the person who fits the theme of this panel best. He is a comic artist, he is a graphic designer, he's an illustrator, he is a rapper, he is a producer, he is a one-man Renaissance machine. Adam Walenta. Producer, DJ, awarded DJ, celebrated producer for his work with Public Enemy and the Bomb Squad and Leaders of the New School, Son of Berserk, DMC, a legend, and I'm honored to have him here, Johnny Juice Rosado. We're still waiting on two other people, and I guess I'll just have to introduce them when they get here. But lastly, down on the end of the table, a founder of the most important rap group of all time. Woo! A comic fan, a true-life superhero. Some call him Genius. Some call him the King. A lot of people call him Sire. Daryl McDaniels, DMC. All right. What was your first exposure to comics? How did those? Were they both part of your life from the get-go?
Wow, my first exposure to, well, before I got exposed to hip-hop, it was comics for me. I think my first exposure to a superhero probably was, I think it was The Amazing Spider-Man. And I think what was cool about Spider-Man and me was, when, I never thought I would be able to get up in front of a million people and rap and talk to them, so as a kid, I was a shy kid, but I was able to relate to Peter Parker and the whole superhero thing because, you know, Peter Parker, even Superman, they wore glasses like me, they were smart. People, you know, as a kid, you know, people would always pick on me and tease me because I went to Catholic school my whole life. So when I discovered Spider-Man, it was like somebody that I could relate to, somebody that is like me. And my first exposure to hip-hop was, it was actually Eddie Chiba. Yeah, Eddie Chiba. I was in the schoolyard with my friends, and, you know, we was in the schoolyard playing basketball. We was, you know, looking at everybody. Everybody was trading, seeing who got the hottest of the comic books. And this dude, Billy Morris, walked in, and he had, hey, how you doing? And he had Eddie Cheever on, he had a cassette tape of Eddie Cheever, and he pushed the button, and it was like 30 seconds of doom, 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 doom. Eddie Cheever said, when you mess around in New York town, you go down with the disco Cheever pound. You go down, go down, go down, go down. You go down. And I was like, rewind it. And he rewinded. We stood in the schoolyard for like 3 hours just listening to 30 seconds of that. But whatever that thing was, I didn't know it was rap, MC, whatever. But whatever that was, it was me. And my transition from, being able to identify with Spider-Man into this rap thing, it gave me a platform where I could be vocal. And I used to just sit in my basement, read my comic books, draw, and listen to Eddie Cheever over and over and over. And then when hip-hop really got popular in Queens, I sold all my comic books to buy DJ equipment. And, it was real sad, and a funny story about that is, before Run was even thinking to put me in a group, him and his friends from his block, they came and rung my doorbell, and they brought comic books from me. He was just Run, he was just Joseph Simmons to me. And then about, 6 or 7 years later, we hooked up and formed the group Run DMC. But it all started with comic books, because I think comic books and hip-hop gave me a way of leaving the world that I was in and going to somewhere where I could be accepted.
We'll get back to the questions in one moment, but the rest of the panel has arrived. So, Marvel artist, creator of what is arguably, creator of what's arguably the first mainstream Marvel comic with hip-hop influence, co-creator of Wolfpack, and creator of the upcoming Battle Rappers series, Ron Wilson. Just saying right now, the other Ron, Ronald Wimberly, creator of the brand new Prince of Cats graphic novel from Vertigo. Hold that thing up, Ron. And a celebrated producer and MC, a multi-decade veteran of the rap game, a unique and essential voice in hip-hop, Gene Gray.
Y'all like that name, right?
All right, so I guess follow-up questions there. You answered all those pretty well. I don't know if anyone else can top that story. So, Pete, Juice, what elements of comics inspire you? Especially, it's obvious with lyricists. You can make references to comics. But as producers, as musicians, as DJs, what elements of comics really influence and infiltrate your work?
I have to say the group heroes, X-Men, Avengers, Defenders. I was looking at the groups of heroes working together. And then, one of my favorite heroes that I kind of could relate to was the Hulk, you know what I'm saying? Because, his powers, the brute strength he has and everything. So I just took that whole attitude and applied it to what I do, you know what I'm saying? I felt like, if I can't be him, I'm gonna take the word super and put it, with what I do, which is music. So that's the attitude I took on. And along with a lot of musical inspirations and people that I learned from, the school that I come from, the Bambaataa, School of Bambaataa, listening to Mr. Magic, rest in peace, African Islam, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, I can go on and on. That's the school where Pete Rock was born, you know what I'm saying? So that's basically, I just took inspiration from a lot of the books and, try to be a hero myself.
Excellent. Juice? You have anything to add?
Nah, not really kidding. I was watching a video at ScratchCon. This is like the Comic-Con, but for scratch DJs and stuff. And for y'all that don't know, I did the scratching on the Public Enemy records. The Terminator X was me. And And at the time, scratching was really not arranged. It was just, if you listen to scratching before that, with the exception of maybe It's Yours by Jazzy J, scratching was just straight through. I wanted to arrange the scratches just like musicians arrange music. And I also play instruments, but that doesn't even matter. At this point, the superhero connection, the comic book thing was, when you see in the group, like Pete said, like the Avengers, they all had their part to play. You know, Captain America tell this dude, yo, you gotta do this. This guy would, everybody would take their parts. So as a DJ, I wanted to kick your ass with scratching. So Kubert said that actually, and that's what it was like a power scratch thing. So when I scratched, like when I did a lot of the arrangements mimicked a fight. So if you listen to Rebel Without a Port here, that's like a back and forth fight, but at the same time, something very simple over the top that don't get from Joeski Love. Get. So it's like a fight's happening and somebody's smashing them on top. So the whole thing was like a big fight. So at the end, what? Done. I just knocked your ass out. So that whole thing was like a comic book fight. And when it ended, that was the end of the pain, and that was on to the next panel of drawings. So the whole thing was, it was sequential. Sometimes it is sequential. Sometimes it's a flashback to another thing in the comic book. So sometimes it doesn't matter. Sometimes you have to surprise people. You've seen that when you flip the comic over and you think it's going to be something, it's like, they went into what happened? I got to wait till, you know, and that's what Public Enemy was as far as production-wise. It was very put together in a similar fashion to the way comic books were put together. So that's what I got.
You got a penciler, you got an inker, you got
right. Yeah.
The whole process.
We got 5 mics last time.
For those that couldn't hear, I was just saying it's like comic books is a process. You have the penciler, the writer, the inker, the letterer, the colorist, and with Public Enemy, they have a lot of production line. Everyone kind of gives their own little parts and builds up into this classic song.
That's why it sounds like that. You know, it's Public Enemy, you heard it sound angry.
Because you got 10.
Because we were all angry. You know, I'm like, yo, why you take my piece out, man? I said, nah, man, this part is good. No, what?
In the Marvel universe, who would you consider the Bomb Squad?
The Bomb Squad? I would say the X-Men. Because we were kind of good. We were kind of good guys, but we were not good guys. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
You're wanted by the law.
We were kind of the outcast. First of all, we're from Long Island. So everybody, I mean, I'm from the Bronx originally. I'm from Long Island.
Stand up, yeah.
Yeah, hip hop. I'm a Zulu Nation member, and I started writing with Greg Nice back in the early '80s, and I was a b-boy with the floor mats. So when I moved on to doing the DJ thing, I moved to Long Island. It was a big difference. And cats were like, "Oh, you in the country?" I'm like, "It's not the country. There's cars and stuff out there." So we were the outcasts of the hip hop world because the 5 boroughs were like, "Your guys is whack." But I'll be honest with you, and I love the BX. I'm from there originally. Long Island changed hip hop in every single way because Rakim's from there, Public Enemy's from there. We kind of because of that different mind state, De La Soul, we changed the way you look at things, and the X-Men changed the way you looked at superheroes.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to rewind back to the beginning here. For Eric Orr, you created Rap and Max Robot 86. Well, okay, you maybe created them earlier, but you published the comic in 86. What inspired you to make a rap comic, and what was the reception from like the hip-hop world, from the comic world?
Let me just start like this and say, thank you. This is my first Comic-Con, and I brought my son, so this is the first time, you know, there's any activation. I grew up across the street from Bambaataa. That's how I sort of like got pulled in Bronx River. I did Jazzy J's first logo. Once I did that logo, I went on to become the studio manager, and I managed some of the greatest hip-hop legends that came through. And Pete could tell you that. Puba managed the first Masters and Ceremony. I production managed Showbiz and AG, Diamond D as well. Anything that came out of Strong City, I sort of like helped manage / studio manager / art director for Strong City MCA Union. With that said, my first And this is it right here. This is Rappin' Max Robot, 1986. Very first hip-hop comic book ever.
Yes.
And I had help from a friend of mine. This goes back to 1984. His name was Keith Harry. Yeah. So, thank you. He helped fund this particular project of mine. And man, it's so much history with this comic. I don't want to get off topic, but I want to really say this. I published it in June of 1986. It sold out 500 pieces by July at 4 times the cover price. And it was just in my neighborhood. And St. Mark's Comics. Then, like I said, I got pulled into the music. So I never really went back to this, but Patrick found me, so so here I am. My connection with the hip hop and the comic situation is because I grew up with and went to school with people who like Van Balen and Jazzy. Actually, Jazzy J was in my carpentry class at Alfred E. Smith. Big up to the Bronx.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. So what was the reaction from people when they saw it?
They loved it. It sold out. Jazzy J is a big believer of this, man. We got music we didn't really put out yet, but we're gonna, since there's a resurgence of this particular comic, we're gonna do some things. I got this producer named Joe. He put together some music for this particular project. But yeah, it was received well. It did well. It sold out. But then I went on tour. Once you go on tour, it changes your life. So I never really went back to this. I started doing album covers, Strong C. So some of you cats know what this is about. Ultimate Force, I'm Not Playing, that's one of mine.
Yeah.
Diamond, when he went on to
Diamond and the Psychology
Payday,
Erotics?
yeah, Payday, I helped design that logo, the Diamond logo.
DITC?
DITC, oh yeah, DITC, Jazzy Joyce, Positive K, Lord Finesse. I just did a project with Lord Finesse as well. So yeah, so that's my connection, and that's how it was received. But I need to get back to this though.
Yes, you do. So I'm going to throw up just sort of a free ball for anyone. There are some obvious connections to comics in hip hop, but what was the first time that you really saw any hip hop influence in comics? Was there a moment where, like when you saw DST scratching on Rocket, like when you first saw like breakdancers on TV, was there a moment where you saw hip hop in mainstream comics and went, whoa?
Does it have to be mainstream? Because my connection is Lloyd Overton. If anybody knows,
Yeah. Yep.
That's the thing that sparked me. So.
Yeah.
What about, I'm a little bit young, but what about Von Vogue?
Vogue, yeah.
Like big influence on graffiti.
Even just the influence of the different styles as comics started to become more manga influenced and graffiti influenced. Even like the old Spider-Man comics, he was drawn, one way by the Lolitas for years, and then all of a sudden you start to see more influence, different lines, different characters, the fluidity of the line work. Everything just became more graffiti oriented, so.
For me, what was cool about the comics?
Go ahead, D. D's time here is limited, so we're going to let him talk now.
Well, for me, what was cool about the comics was I noticed that it was cool because all the superheroes had a descriptive tag, like the Amazing Spider-Man, the Invincible Iron Man, the Incredible Hulk. So, yeah, well, for me, that's good that you said that. When Ron said, yo, D, you're going to be in a group. So I didn't want to rhyme in front of y'all and none of that. It was all make-believe. Like, when I was doing hip-hop in my basement, it was just me pretending to be the microphone master DMC. So I based everything on a superhero. So I remember when me and Ron, we made the record, I remember what caught me what appealed to me about comics and the hip hopers was when I first heard the Cold Crush. You know the Cold Crush 4MCs, right? When I heard the Cold Crush Brothers was like the Hulk of hip hop. And what I mean by that was, you know, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. You know, you would say, oh my God, who's that? And Africa Bambaataa and the Zulu Nation. Like, Africa Bambaataa wasn't, okay, what DJ is that? When I first heard Africa Bambaataa, I was like, what the hell is that? Like, what the hell is the Africa Bambaataa? What is Zulu Nation? But when the Cold Crush came along, it reminded me just like the comics, because the Cold Crush names was like the Grandmaster Kaz, the Almighty KG, the Heartbreaker JDL. So they really had that superhero persona in the same way that their names defined them was the way that the characters each portrayed those personalities. So I'm armed, sitting in my basement where Ron says, yo, D, I'm gonna put you in a group. So we need a DJ. When me and Ron first made It's Like That Sucker MCs, we didn't have a DJ yet. So we had to look at Hollis Queens neighborhood, and it was Jay and a couple other dudes that was doing all the block parties. So we was like, okay, we're gonna need a DJ. Ron was like, yo, I think we should pick Jay. And the reason why we picked Jay was because of this, 2 reasons. He was one of the best DJs in the neighborhood, but he also was down with the Hollis crew. So we figured if we put Jay down with us as the DJ, when we go over to other areas of Queens and the Bronx and Manhattan and Connecticut and Philly and stuff like that, the Hollis crew is going to come along with us, so the stick-up kids ain't going to be able to stick us up because we got free security. So we had Jay, right? And when Jay first got in the group, it was funny because his name was Jazzy J. So I'm sitting there, and my whole thing is I'm very OCD. You gotta be unique, you gotta be original. So I'm sitting there, yo, he cannot be Jazzy J. Biting is weak. Like, biting is you can't be a copycat. You gotta be original. So I was sitting there, and I just started thinking about all my comic books, and I started thinking about the Cold Crush. And I was like, okay, he can't be Grand Wizard Theodore. Theodore got that name. He can't be Grandmaster Flash. He can't be the Grand Mixer. Then it came to me like a comic book idea. Oh my God, he's going to be the Jam Master J. Because I was like, not only is, because when you thought about a jam, the jam had 2 meanings. Yo, man, if it was a party, yo, that jam last night was dope. But also, a record was a jam too, right, Johnny? So, yo, man, play that jam. So, Jay wasn't just the jam master of the party or the record. He was the jam master of both. And I remember when I went to Running Jay, and I was like, yo, I got it. Jay is a superhero DJ, and his name is going to be Jam Master Jay. And they wasn't in the comic book, so they kind of just looked at me like, so I'm telling you, he's going to be the Jam Master Jay. And I was like, okay, these motherfuckers don't get it, right? So what I did was, I remember the Cold Crush had all those routines over Rock in the Pocket, so I went home and I wrote the record, J-A, while all the letters of his name, cutting and stretching, because remember, they had those superhero cartoons in the early, was it 70s, where, yeah, it wasn't animated, they would just paint the Hulk and make him move. So I grew up doing those, but I remember all the superheroes had theme songs. Dr. Bruce Banner, Detective Hammer, Ray's Turn, and then the Spider-Man, everybody had to sing. So I was like, I don't want to write this record. And then I remember when I came back, and I said, put Rockin' in the Pocket on. J-A-Y, all the letters of his name. Cutting and spreading. He looked at me, okay, D, we got it. He's a jam master. I told you nobody tells better stories than me. And you can understand, like when people finally told me and Running Jay, when they used to see us, they used to always go, I said this about the Cold Crush Melly Mel, those dudes was, those were my superheroes. And when people, Run DMC first came out, so I would see, after Raising Hell, people was like, yo, man, growing up, man, you was like my superhero. So for me, Kool Moe Dee, the Almighty KG, Africa Bambaataa, and Zoo, these dudes were all like the comic books that I grew up accustomed to listening to, because just like hip-hop was just like the world of comic books. You know what I'm saying? We grew up in the city, crime, poverty, and all of that. And, know, whether it was the Hulk, Spider-Man, or Iron Man, these guys was able to become something that we all wanted to be. And I think the connection is that when you become this hip-hop personality, I think what separates our generation and the generation of hip-hop artists now is we truly cared about representing our community. The reason why you was able to love LL and Run DMC and K. Soul and Eric and Rakim and Africa Their Mind and Kool Moe Dee, even though we were celebrities, we were just an extension of y'all. Just like me and Pete Rock, we talked about it. Marvel was dope because it was New York. You know what I'm saying? The Marvel characters were like B-boys. You know what I'm saying? They had flavor and everything. So I think that's the whole significant relationship of it. Like Johnny said, when you got on that microphone, you had to come like the Hulk or you had to come like Iron Man or don't come at all.
And actually, one of the first times I remember graffiti in comics is the Wolfpack.
Yeah.
Bringing it back to your earlier question. That
a little bit of design.
Right on the cover of,
Yeah.
of the graphic novel and everything.
Yep.
And it's right there.
And when you look at Marvel comics in particular over the course of the 80s, 81 or 82, you get a joke from Spider-Man swinging by some breakdancers. You get to mid-80s, you have Wolfpack, and all of a sudden there's graffiti lettering on the cover.
Right, before
it's set in
that,
the South Bronx.
Even the image of New York was still kind of clean before that. When you did Wolfpack, now all of a sudden everybody had to step up their reality, and they started putting graffiti in the background on the walls. And
that broke down a lot of walls, because after that you get the lettering on covers of all sorts of things. Lots of graffiti influence in Marvel Comics art, and by 1991, Kid and Play have their own Marvel comic.
And then the Wolfpackers, the Wolfpacker on the cover, they look like Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, kind of like all decked out and they're ready to rock.
And actually here, I'm going to hand you the mic, Ron. That leads into another good question, one for you. You worked on Marvel books in an era of transition for the company. I mean, one could argue that all eras are eras of transition, but also you brought a really unique sensibility to the work. You had Frank Miller's Daredevil, which was like a sort of mythologized pulp New York, but you didn't see any real New York in the books before that. So, I mean, it might not have been perfectly accurate, but they were code-approved comics. It was a sea change from what came before. So what was that like with you working in that system?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that it's a pleasure sitting here with the rap legends, comic book artists, that all seek to interwoven hip-hop themes in comic books. And when you're sitting around in your house, and you listen to Grandmaster Flash, Furious Five, don't push me, because I'm close to the edge. You know, I was just inspired. I know I had to get some type of, I always went through hip-hop characters in comics. But that was sort of, I worked for Marvel behind, so I had to pay bills. So they found my work was best doing the thing, Incredible Hulk, which coincided with the TV show Lou Ferrigno. I did Power Man. So, I was a little kid and I did what I was told to do. It was a pleasure to see these artists like John Buscema. I never saw Jack Kirby once. I saw him out in San Diego. When I saw him in San Diego, I was so scared to meet him because he had this white hair and olive-colored skin. And he had this entourage that would follow him everywhere he went. So I told Joe Rubenstein hey, can you introduce me to Jack Kirby? And Joe said, sure. So he went over there, said a few words to Jack Kirby. And when Jack Kirby turned around, he almost like parted the Red Sea like Moses. And when he came toward me, my heart started to beat. It was thumping. So he took both of his hands, clapped hands with mine. He said, just do it your way, son. Just do it your way. That was my most memorable moment in comics, meeting the king.
So for D, since Mr. DMC, Daryl's going to leave early. So another question for you. You said comics are a huge influence on you, and now it sort of comes full circle. You have a project of your own that you're working on?
Yes, I hope to produce and develop, I hope to develop and produce and put out a superhero. For real, real. It's funny because people would always approach me for, and it's weird that it took 25 years, but I guess I had to educate myself first, you know, because I was always into comics, but, you know, what does it really take to do a successful comic? What does it really take to have an impact on a community and to create an audience? What does it really take to have a legendary, historical, you know, history-making comic book character like, you know, the Hulk, Iron Man, Captain America, Superman, and Batman? So for years, people was always, you know, telling me, DMC, you know, you need to do a, you know, hip-hop comic, or a rap comic, and, you know, this and that. And two significant things happened. Chris Rock, I think it was like 5 years ago in Rolling Stone. Chris Rock, they asked him about Run DMC, and he was like, yeah, I love Run DMC, but I always loved DMC, man, because, you know, with the glasses and the hat and the gloves and the gold chain and stuff like that, he looked like a superhero. He was like my superhero. And then it struck me, I was like, oh, that's it. Maybe I can be the superhero. People said I'm a superhero. I mean, they've been saying it. And a guy named Bill Adler, who was one of our early publicists, he had did the first autobiography of Run DMC. And he was like, you know, yeah, you know, Run DMC, Run and J were cool, but for some reason I always liked DMC. And the funny thing is, everything that I did artistically as an artist, subconsciously, it was me taking all that direction and intention from my comic books. Because number one, if you listen to all my raps, crash through walls, come through floors, bust through shit, like when Run told me write a rhyme, I ain't sell drugs. I ain't never been in jail. I ain't get shot. That shit hurt. I like my freedom. So when Run said, "Gee, you got a rhyme," everything that was in me had to come out. So if you listen to my rhyme, the microphone master, the devastated mic controller, and now as I look back on all of that, everything that I listen, I was to the point where, you know, most rappers would talk about, yeah, I'll punch you in the face and I'll shoot you. But I was like in a fantasy world. I was like, one dude told me, man, the greatest rhyme I ever heard was, I cut the head off the devil and I'll throw it at you. All of that, if you go listen to my rhymes, all of that stuff came from the comic books. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to create a superhero that is going to be definitive of the lives every life, my life, and every life that I've been living, and maybe lives before me, that I've encountered on this Run DMC journey. Because when you think about it, there's still a lot of things out here for us to fight. So I'm gonna just take that DMC character. I mean, it's not a character, but when I look back at it, I have a good blueprint to create a successful, you know, comic book where, like, I don't think you should make a hip-hop comic, or I don't think you should make a rap comic. I think when you set out to create something, you should just set out to create a good comic book overall. So what the thing that's going to make my comic a hip-hop comic book is my whole life, my whole culture, my whole religion is hip-hop. So those elements will be in there. Over the years, I've encountered people from here, all the way over to Japan, all the way over to Europe that would say, man, I'm going to do this hip-hop comic book, but it would always fail. Don't label it a hip-hop comic book. If you're hip-hop, whatever it is that you create, if it's a sculpture, if it's music, if it's a comic book, if it's a movie, if you're hip-hop, that genre, that culture is going to be in there. Set out to create a good comic book. But everything that I've done that was able to inspire people musically, to motivate people and to educate people, I'm just going to take hip-hop's been around for how long? Do I check that for real? You know this. Hip-hop has been around from 1974. So everything that Africa Bambaataa, like you said, Grandmaster Flash and the First Five taught me, everything that Run DMC did, everything that PE did, everything that you people, everything that the young people today that I speak to, everything dealing with all the issues that we go to, I'm going to put all of those elements into a comic book because I don't want to just make a DMC comic book. I want to make a comic book that is able to relate to everybody on this planet globally, but at the same time, it must have the appeal that hip-hop has. Because when we was doing hip-hop in New York, like Jay said, it was the biggest thing that was in our hearts at the time. So obviously it's going to be bigger than everybody else. So I would think, Adam Ellis, you think in about 8 months we'll probably have something that is really definitive, like we'll probably have something official for the world to look at, because I don't want to just create a DMC comic book and it dies in a year and a half. And people go, you remember that. I'm talking about, I want something 1,000 years from now, people still seeing, that DMC character and the villains and everything that we're doing. So I'm in the process of doing that, and that's why people say, what are you doing here at Comic-Con? Technically, what I'm doing here is I'm trying to gather information. I'm being a spy. So I can learn to do it right.
Set yourself up. So there's Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, and DMC. Thank you. Gene, since haven't asked you a question yet, this follows on nicely from that. Of all the musical artists here, your comics ties are probably most apparent. You used to perform under the name What?
I did.
And once you retired that stage name, you chose one from a comics character, one that literally signified rebirth, but is also a force of unstoppable power. Jean Grey, Phoenix, Dark Phoenix, or maybe the two people in the room who wouldn't know everything about comics. So you incorporate comics references and influence into your work. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, DMC has to switch. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. We would have met. That was fucking awesome.
So, sorry to interrupt your question there, but I think it was pretty valid.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, number one, this is absolutely fucking awesome. And this is my first Comic-Con, and I didn't bring any of my kids, but I brought my giant big kid, which is myself, and probably about 82 of my inner children. So, for me, I have a brother who's 6 years older than me, and my brother is and was pretty much obsessed with comic books, and we fortunately or unfortunately for my mom lived directly upstairs from a comic book store, so I pretty much was raised in the store, and also, I think it's really important that we started talking about New York and comics. And I grew up in the middle of the city on 23rd Street between 7th and 8th. So to me, looking at everything and looking at those movies, I was like, this is Gotham. This is what it is. I live in the middle of Gotham. How fucking cool is that? And even to this day, even looking up and trying to plot, be like, this would be a terrible neighborhood for Spider-Man to be in, because the buildings are so fucking low, and there's a lot of... I look at the city like that. I look at different cities like that. So for me, comics were definitely a form of escapism, and I know we've also been talking about, especially the X-Men and the idea of the outcast version of it, and maybe in 2012, I'm cool with me being the person that I am, but definitely growing up in the 70s and 80s, I was very, very fucking different and very much of an outcast, and to find something that didn't make me feel as left out was amazing. And I really gravitated to everything that was comic books and kind of video games and graphic novel involved. I was probably reading things that I shouldn't have been reading at that age. Like I really got into Love and Rockets when I was super young. And I think the idea that, and again, I've only really started to understand how it works with the art now in the past few years, and really put it to great use. We have been putting out a lot of independent music since the early 90s. And when I started to write and really started to understand the type of things that I wanted to write, I realized how much of my vivid imagination went into writing, you know, and I know talking about things like it's not just regular disses, it's definitely ultra violence, and it goes into things that okay, I know you probably wouldn't be able to do that in that threat. I'm not going to shoot you with 82 fucking guns, but that would be awesome because I would love an arsenal room. And pretty much for me, I think it's because there wasn't a budget to go in and do videos and to promote it the way that I could see it in my mind, so I had to write it out that way. And I had to make it as possibly visual as I could. So in my mind, I'm seeing the comic book and I'm seeing the video the whole time. And writing in terms of, you're talking about like fight sequences and being sequential about stuff in panels, is how I think that I write, and write in bars and write in stories, and almost imagining fight scenes and the pacing of words actually being almost either like a dance or a choreographed fight. So all of those things kind of tied into the kind of writing and the kind of visuals. And when I chose the name Jean Grey, I didn't want to pick Storm because that's so obvious. But for a lot of reasons, and I think I started to understand growing into the name with a little bit more age, that there's a chance for rebirth and doing things over. And I started introducing myself randomly, I think when I was doing random drops, because you gotta think really quick. And the first time I did a drop as Jean Grey, I was like, it's your friendly neighborhood superhero Jean Grey. And I was like, shit, well, I can't steal that from that. And if I do that, then I kind of have to really be the friendly neighborhood. God damn it, I'm not friendly at all. How the fuck am I going to work this shit out? And what's interesting for me is, and I think for performers who are on stage at any time, or what you hear from a lot of people is, you're my hero. And that's always a big deal to hear from anyone. It's definitely a big deal for me, being in the minority of female MCs, and a lot of times hearing why, we need Jane, come on, save us, we need you to save us. Why don't you just do this and come in and destroy this other person and save us? And I'm like, well, I'm not necessarily here to save, oh my God, am I supposed to save everybody? So kind of the duality of actually wanting to do that and actually really coming into this business trying to change something and yeah, I guess in a way save it and save the way that hip hop is looked at, and kind of really push for a different view on what I do, has been a lot of my kind of superhero lifestyle, and I think it's probably not the Jean Grey character that I look to mostly. With age, I would probably go Dr. Manhattan. Because it turns into so you want me to save you now? Well, I've been here doing this for a long time. I don't know. Let's see how I feel. And yeah, it's gotten into, we could be here all day, but I'm doing comic books and stuff, so there's a whole new video coming out. The storyline's been running from about 1994, and it runs to about 2020. So I've been jumping around timelines and stories in a way that I'm finally getting to explain this here. Okay, I'll stop talking.
No, thank you. Also, a topic that I feel needs to be addressed up front, and I'm glad you touched on it. The minority of female MCs. Also, in attempting to put this panel together, I ended up with an overwhelmingly male panel because I'm drawing from two worlds where females are minimized and ignored. And I'm really, really so honored and happy that you could be here to represent an entire spectrum of humanity that is so often excluded from these panels and these events. So, another quick thing, could this crew member in the back please get us some more water? Our pitcher is empty. We have a lot of people up here and we desperately need some
More coffee, too.
More coffee, sure. And a hard-boiled egg. Ron Wimberly, down on the end. Your first well-known mainstream comic work was Sentences, a collaboration with M.F. Grimm. Prince of Cats, your new book, digs deep into the milieu of classic hip-hop and New York culture. I shouldn't say that word out loud, I'm sorry. It digs deep into New York culture and classic hip-hop, while at the same time spinning riffs on some Shakespeare themes. What parts of this culture really, like, are you drawn to? What visually and textually, like?
It's bugged because I had an epiphany when DMC said that he wanted to make a comic, but he didn't want to make a hip-hop comic. And I was a little bit vexed when the book first came out, and I saw people describing it like, oh, it's hip-hop meets Shakespeare. I'm like, yo, I didn't, I just drew a comic. Why are you trying to say it's hip-hop? Because black dude did it. That's kind of how
black people are on the cover.
Right. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of how I felt about it. But then DMC said something, was like, yo, I don't want to make a hip-hop comic. It just has these things in it, and that's why it is. I was looking at it like, yo, they were dissing me, kind of like, I got a whole bunch of different cultural elements in there. But I grew up with hip hop. Like, hip hop is a part of my language, and not until sitting here just now, like, even when you told me I was gonna be on the panel, I was like, what the fuck are you gonna be on the panel for? I draw comics, I don't even have a lot of romantic ideas about superheroes, and like, this cat's exploiting power over other people, like, that sounds like the enemy to me, right? So like, I was like, why am I gonna be on this panel? But then when DMC said that, I was like, damn, that's what Elvis, that's what he's for, that's what he's for, is like to bring enlightenment. So
Did you just say Elvis?
Not Elvis, Elvis. Elvis. I feel bad about saying Elvis too, because so that's how it informs my work. It's like, it's what I listen to, it's what I grew up listening to. Hip hop did what I try to do with comics. So like, when I grew up listening to, say like my mom or my dad was listening to the Gap Band, and like, so I hear like, you know what I mean? Like, if I hear a sample, like say if I hear that sample on the Nas album, like all of a sudden I'm transported, you know what I mean? I'm having a good time or whatever, but I'm also transported back to another time and place. So what I wanted to do is kind of do that with the comics. So like, actually have, the visual language sampled. So like Shakespeare, I sample Shakespeare, and I mix it in there with, my own language, and I mix it in there with records that I listened to, when I was in high school. So like, if you look at the intro, I mix up, I have Shakespeare, I have Biggie Smalls, and I have Langston Hughes at the very end there, bringing it all together. So like, I saw comics, it's poetry and it's hip hop in an abstracted way. I don't mean to get too heady with it, but so I didn't deliberately do it, but I mean, that's just what it is. It's just part of the process.
All right. Adam, of everyone on this panel, you're probably, like I said, the closest to an all-around, all-star, drawing comics, making covers for hip-hop records, producing beats, rapping yourself. What do you see in these two cultures that fits together so well that one could say practically all of your careers have this at the core?
I think it's that like Dee said, that underground voice that, we all probably at some point felt out of place. And with comics, you have this whole world of secret identities. So you create these different identities for yourself, and you could be someone else to express what's really on your mind, what your passion is, what your soul is. And hip hop you know, for me growing up, it was that voice where you can express yourself and just be in a whole different realm of you know, you could be that nerdy guy with glasses and really good in school, and then you could go to a party and you could rock a jam and you could be a whole other superhero and be someone else. And for me, that the two worlds just make sense because, you know, like Juice was saying, you know, the X-Men were the underground, you know, they were wanted by the government. You know, growing up, hip-hop was frowned upon. You know, it had like a little section in the store, maybe. You know, it had one night a week on the radio, maybe, you know, depending on where you lived. And, you know, your parents hated it. And it was a way to rebel. And same thing with comic books. At one point, comic books were considered, you know, bad and evil, and, you know, they corrupt your mind. And that hip-hop music will corrupt your mind. So, you know, but at the same time, if you were into it and you loved it, you knew that there was a positive message behind it. You knew that there, you know, Spider-Man wasn't evil. He had a positive message, you know, great responsibility. And, you know, you're listening to Run DMC, you know, stay away from drugs and go to school. And so where your parents were looking at it as in a negative light, and you saw the positive light, and you just wanted to be a part of that, you know. And the two visually go together, just with the different styles. And everybody had a different style. So you could have Spider-Man drawn by, you know, the Ramirez, and then you could have Spider-Man drawn by someone else. It could be totally different, but it's the same character. Same thing with hip-hop. Everyone can have a voice and still have, you know, a part in hip-hop. So, you know, what I do is different from what, you know, Public Enemy does, and what they do is different from what NWA does, but it's still hip-hop, and it still has that positive message to it.
Okay. That fits well with something else I was thinking. Pass the mic down to Kagan. The visual elements of hip-hop. You really came to my attention, and probably a lot of people's attention, with the History of Rap poster. But in your illustration work in Infinite Kung Fu, there's a lot of the like visual elements of hip hop iconography. There's a lot of the visual elements. So what in that really like inspires you and your illustrative work?
Yeah, I think like with this Kung Fu book, there's nothing hip hop about it, but I think if you read it, you can tell the type of music I listen to. There's like actually there's a connection with Jean Grey. Has anyone seen the show Kung Fu? She did some voice work for that, and I did some of the DVD covers and laid out the packaging. Yeah, so I don't know, Kung Fu and hip hop go together. One thing that kind of I think about it, you mentioned in the intro that inclusiveness about it. It
Yes.
seems like you know, comics and hip hop is like something that you hear and you go, oh, I could do that. Like you can't play an instrument or you can't sing, but you don't need to. Or you know, you don't need to learn how to draw to do graffiti. You write your name and embellish it as much as you can. Comics is like, I mean, when you actually try to do it, it's a lot harder than it looks. But people, it seems like something that's actually doable because you actually don't need a whole lot of equipment and extra people. It's a thing that you can do yourself.
I just wanted to add on to what you just said. Before I was actually rapping, I decided that I wanted to be a DJ, and started when I was around 13, and was probably still doing like parties and shit till I was about 15, and then was like, I don't want to. It was not, you know, Serato and everything's in there. It's crates and I'm carrying coffins and stuff around. I was like, I don't want to carry all this stuff. And I was like, oh, rapping. That's just a pen. That's good work.
I like carrying all that shit. I'm gonna tell you something. I'm a drummer, and I'm also a DJ. I had the heaviest shit no matter what I did. But it's something that you didn't touch upon, you know what? And this is what's weird. First of all, I served 6 years in the military and I was in the Gulf War. So my idea of what a hero is a lot different now than it was when I was young. Yeah, all that stuff you play on Call of Duty and shit, jumping out of planes at 27,000 feet, I've done it. I've done all of that stuff. I've shot at people I've been shot at, and I've been hit. So, my comic book world is different from your comic book world now. But one thing that you didn't mention, every single hero is more fragile mentally than the villains they fight. Because one thing is that heroes have to do that villains don't, they have a moral compass that they have to balance. You have three parts of your psyche. You have the id, the ego, and the superego. The superego is your moral compass. Your id is your selfish me, and your ego fights a battle between the two to try to get your id what it wants, but without sacrificing your morality. Evil people don't have that. They just respond to their id. Superheroes have a harder job because they have to constantly find a way to balance that. And that's why I think that almost anybody, whether you're in hip-hop or not, gravitate towards comic books because we all go through that struggle. You want to punch somebody in the face because he's an asshole, but you don't. So what you do, you punch a wall. You know what I'm saying? It's like, ah, shit, man. You know, you do something else. A lot of people get on turntables and beat up their records. A lot of people beat up a drum machine. You know, some people take it out by writing. That's called displacement. And all of that stuff is psychological bullshit. But I'm saying it because this is real shit. It's real, and it's a good way. So when next time you guys in class and shit, and they tell you that, you say, "Yo, I heard that at a comic book convention of all places by a hip hop DJ. What the hell's going on with the world?" And that shit is real. That is the realest part of comic book. So, you know, because honestly, in the beginning of hip hop, it wasn't all inclusive. That whole romantic shit, you got like guys going, you know, oh, poor Negroes and Latinos going to the park and plugging it. No, that's bullshit. We were gangs, all right? The Black Spades, who turned into the Zulu Nation, was a gang, all right? The Casanovas, who spun off of that, were a gang. These guys were gangs. You saw the Warriors, right? Savage Nomads, the Chingalings. They were gangs, yo. So all that, oh, it was all nice. They breakdanced so they wouldn't fight. Well, they breakdanced, then they fought. I was there. So that shit is romanticized. So that's the same thing as superheroes. Because you know what? The Avengers always found a way to fight another superhero group. And they all had the same thing in mind, but they didn't always have the same method. So you always was, you know, getting in a beef with somebody. That shit all mirrored. That shit mirrored stuff before there was even hip-hop with the Fania All-Stars and the Latino movement in the late 60s. That happened before that with the blues movement and the jazz movement, which blues is never explored because blues is really the father of hip-hop because they were the first to tell stories of pain. So you want to go back and tell the story right because one thing about comic books, there's a timeline and you can always find out when something happened and where because it's annotated. Hip-hop is not annotated correctly because we don't write the history. Other people do. So until we do, we never really tell a real story. You know, so hip-hop is still trying to become a hero to itself.
Well, that's one of the things we're trying to do with this panel is tell that story. We are just about out of time, so I need to go down the line.
Yeah, I want to bring real quick, the Nomads and the Aces, and like that's actually another part of Prince of Cats. It's very hip hop. That was like a big inspiration for me when I started working on the book. Looking at those gangs in the late 70s, like watching 80 blocks from Tiffany's like over and over and over again, and like tons of little, you know, weird, obscure, you know, I went in, you know, and I wanted to tell that story, so I wanted to go and look at the source, and maybe that's why it's hip hop, because like my work was born from some of the same stuff, you know, and like, you know, Bombada was part of the Aces, right? He was in the Aces? Black Spades? My bad, Black Spades, yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, but no, like, so the language and the visual language informs it each different medium, so that's all I'm going to say.
All right, well, I would love this conversation to go on a lot longer, but let's just go down the line and quick. Tell us what you're working on, talk about your new projects.
I'm working on a new project called Battle Rappers. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And the concept is a little different because it's a hip-hop concept is not an earthly origin, but yet it has everything to do with Earth because I am true and loyal to the birthplace of hip hop, New York City, undisputed birthplace of hip hop. So it all starts from the core of New York. But all I'm saying is, what if other civilizations, other races, other aliens were rapping and watched us rap over the years and have mimicked us and copied us, and now they feel they're better than us. So now they're saying we must rap for our planet. So we're ready to kick ass and battle.
What I'm working on is I'm trying to revive this and get it back on, get it back in some books and whatever. So anybody out there that knows what's going on, inform me, because I've been in the music game with these cats for a long time, but this is my baby right here.
Our time is up, so we can super quick. Okay. Sorry, I want to give everyone a chance to step in.
I did the cover of the Village Voice coming out this Wednesday.
I'm doing a digital comic book series, LP album, where I'm producing all the beats. And Watch the Throne is my latest production out there. And Robert Glasper, who's a jazz pianist, who's #1 on the chart. And my superpower will be making 1 billion beats in half a millisecond.
I got the Public Enemy graphic novel, but I also have a brand new CD called Family First. It's out now. I'm working on a new album with Juice here. And I just finished the Craig G album cover, the Public Enemy album cover, and a bunch of others that you can check for. The Bumpy Knuckles collection album cover.
All right. Johnny?
All right, I produced 2 Public Enemy albums in the past 4 months. They're both out right now. We got nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I just got nominated for NAACP Award for scoring music for anybody in the bar, so on the Sony and Jazz. I'm producing 8 albums right now, including one from These Are the New School. I'm doing a Cold Brothers album. I'm doing a Fearless 4 album. And I don't know, what am I not doing?
Two albums out before the end of the year. One is Gotham Down, the second one is Cake of Death. They both deal with a lot of time travel and shit. There's a lot of videos. The video Close thing is out now. I'll be directing and editing everything, and the show Like the Genie's coming out. And probably full comic book, but Mike Hoffman will be doing all the artwork, so it's going to be pretty good.
All right, and Ron
Blood Dynamites and reruns. I'm working on a gratuitous ninja animation. I'm actually making a hot jazz EP that's basically making fun of the Joker and Batman. My show is in Bushwick, November 6th at the Super Cheap Gallery. All right.
Okay, meet us afterwards. We'll be hanging out around. We'll be stuff to give away. I would like to thank everyone here. Thank everyone.
Thank you.
Thank everyone